Welcome to the Humanity Leadership Podcast. My name is David Wheatley. We're here to talk leadership in small, bite-sized and practical chunks. Enjoy. Well, welcome. This is another of our family business episodes for 2024. And this time I'm meeting with Dr. Bill Dobbins. And Bill runs and owns a company called Caster Concepts. And as we'll discover, a whole bunch of other companies as well. Caster Concepts is a Albion, Michigan-based heavy-duty custom caster producer. And if you around here and you ever drive I-94 in the winter, you'll know them because they put up a season's greeting sign right by the side of the freeway every holiday time. And so Bill, I've known for a long time. He's second generation leader in this organization, as we'll discover, and he's got some great ideas about the family business side of things. And also we hear something of the conscious capitalism approach that he has to his work. Well, welcome, Bill. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, David. I'm looking forward to having a conversation today about family businesses, and maybe I have some insight. I certainly have family businesses, and I'm excited to at least share my experiences. We can argue whether it's best practice or not. So,
well, best practice for one is terrible practice for somebody else. But so start us off. You mentioned you've got family businesses. Start us off by painting a picture of your family business, the different industries potentially and the generations.
Yeah, I'll just preempt that by saying, for the people that are out there listening, that David and I have had a relationship for probably almost 20 years now. I hate to think of it. It's been 20 years. We look so young. But I've always valued David's coaching, mentoring, leadership direction. David's been very involved in not only my family businesses, coaching, my direct reports and myself. And so it's a privilege to be here and have a little chat, reflecting back on 20 years of mistakes, frankly. All of those I have corrected along the way at your coaching. So not really. I have plenty of them that I'm still making. But back to family business. We do have multiple family business for I guess for a multitude of different reasons. The main business is Caster Concepts, which is a business that my father and I started about 38 years ago. We manufacture heavy-duty industrial casters. We had some outside people in it, but over the years, through buying people out, retirements, and that sort of thing, it's a solely owned business by the Dobbins family. In conjunction with that, there's 6 other manufacturing businesses that are closely tied to Caster Concepts and are great suppliers, but also have their own expertise and their own book of business also. And then we go out a little further and again, not going down the wrong path, but I'm a firm believer in capitalism, and you and I can, we've had that discussion about capitalism, but I like to think about conscious capitalism and what do we do, with the profits that are generated. And so part of our other businesses is active involvement in our community and starting businesses in a challenging downtown area in the Rust Belt of Michigan, frankly, that's been ravaged by loss of jobs and deteriorating downtowns and frankly deteriorating attitudes about the community. And so we have a whole group of downtown businesses, from a bakery to a gift shop to a cigar lounge to a gaming center to a downtown grocery, that we all consider as part of our family businesses. So which one do you want to talk about?
Well, I think I tried to count them once and got to 23 before I finished, and I'm told that there's more, but there's one. So really then there's this manufacturing group which all is surrounded and goes to support the caster work to a great extent. and then the conscious capitalism stuff, which is the downtown development pieces, which I'll make the point that we always agree on the conscious capitalism side of things. But
You're right, we have.
yeah. And so then tell us about the family that's involved in that. You said you started the manufacturing business with your dad.
Yeah, I started with my dad and actually my older brother also, and then again was fortunate that as he got older, gave me the opportunity to acquire that. My brother was not actively involved, and so we bought him out, and so at that point, then it was sort of my my responsibility to either be successful or fail. And I left my previous job when I had control of the business to come and work at Castor Concepts on a full-time basis. And that was in 2003, so a little bit over 20 years ago. I made a career change, and and then eventually, my son, who was off doing another um, profession, decided, hey, I know I always wanted to get away from home, but now I'm thinking that maybe I want to come back home. And so very fortunate to have Andrew come back and be a key part of the business. He's now vice president of manufacturing. And frankly, he does all the work and I do very little work these days. But I do a lot of thinking. And so sometimes that's the hardest work.
So that's generation three is now in the Castor business.
Yep.
And just you've already opened up the door to the complexities of your other businesses. How's the broader family? Because there's more family than just.
Yep. So in the community of businesses, I have two daughters and one son-in-law who are actively involved, and those businesses are, we run three nonprofits, which is my daughter Caroline, and then we run downtown gift shops and bakeries and that are owned and operated by Emily, my oldest daughter, my second child. And then my son-in-law, who runs our real estate business and the downtown grocery store, along with my Andrew's wife, who assists at the grocery store also. So, and then my other son-in-law runs the cigar lounge. So, you know, um, and just because we have all those doesn't mean that's smart. And so I don't want anybody to assume that that's some sort of smart business model. It's I think like a lot of businesses, and I'll include family businesses, is it's driven by a passion. And that's where, we do agree about conscious capitalism. And, the passion that's behind this work. And I've been fortunate that my kids sort of caught the bug from my wife and I. I better not forget my wife, who's very active at the bakery. Um, and so, it's amazing what purpose and purpose statements and associated passion when people connect to that. So, we try to not tell, but instruct or educate, I guess, at all levels of this business for employees, is that this isn't just a job to sort of make casters, not a job about making donuts. We're really trying to rebuild a community. And so, that's how these businesses connected with our purpose and in turn our passion to make an impact, frankly. And you can take all the small businesses, you could claim they're all nonprofits. They all take a certain amount of, they certainly take time and they take resources. So that how this kind of convoluted um, sort of thing works. But at the end of the day, Castor Concepts is what keeps a log on the fire for all the smaller businesses. And so, I'm fortunate to have I'll say a well-run, well-operated business led by Andrew and Doug Backinger, our vice president of sales, both who have been coached and mentored by David. I don't want to say carry on the legacy, because I don't know. I don't necessarily like legacy sorts of things. I want them to build their own legacy. I want them to feel the responsibility of a family-owned business that's providing opportunity to 140 or 50 employees who all have two or three or four or five people that they're providing for. And so, that's really the responsibility. My dad told me early on, your number one responsibility is to make sure everybody in this organization has a paycheck. That's the number one responsibility. And these days, they have a paycheck and it has to cover all the things that they need in an inflationary time, in challenging times, in pandemics, and whatever it may be that we've been through recently. Um, so I congratulate my family. I'm proud of my family for the sincerity that they've um, put towards this. They don't see it just as a job. They're all secondary and beyond master degree educated young people that could get they could get a job almost anywhere, I'll say. And they choose to come back to Albion, come to our community, and be part of the family business. So all those things are important to my wife and I, Karen. They're important to the community. Um, and from a family standpoint, we're able to juggle it, and nobody hates anybody else, and nobody's necessarily trying to get a heads up on the next person. Um, and who knows what will happen once we're gone. So, we talked about best practices as we sort of prepped for this, David, and I sort of struggle with best practices, because I don't for a minute think that we're doing things the best way, or that we couldn't get better. But two things come to mind. Every one of my kids went and had a job somewhere else before they decided to come back, and I think that's a big deal. We didn't pressure them. We always told them there's an opportunity here, but they all went. They worked at other places. They worked for different people. They worked in a variety of different businesses before they returned, um, and found a passion for what my wife and I were working on. And I think that's a big deal. The second thing I'll add to that, and this is something that I sort of picked up through tech, in Vistage, which is a mentoring group that I was part of for 20 years. And that's that my wife and I are totally transparent with our children as far as estate planning, about how the businesses work, about where the money goes, about who gets paid what and where they get paid from. Um, and every year we have a family meeting. We have a build up to that where we meet with attorneys, accountants, and financial planners. We subsequently take all the information from that and share it openly with our kids. And even this year, we opened it up to my 18-year-old grandson who's graduated from high school. That to me has been extremely valuable. Is transparency and openness with everybody. They hear the same message from my wife and I, and so it's people aren't left for an interpretation. The message isn't sort of filtered, and I think it's been extremely valuable. So there's a couple of, again, call them best practices, or something that we've found to be helpful for us, David.
Well, I appreciate sharing that and the transparency and sharing. And if my questions get uncomfortable, just let me know and I'll stop pulling in that thread. But I like the dynamic that you set, that you've got. If we just take the three kids, Andrew running all the manufacturing, which is the big money maker, if you like, Caroline running the nonprofits, and Emily running some of the small enterprise stuff. Other practices that, even though they can see how much everybody earns, are there things that you have in place to make sure that feels fair and good and right to everybody?
Well, I don't know. I'll answer it, but maybe I won't answer it. I'll at least explain my perception of it, and that's my concern is always what is the appearance to my employees, whether they're at the manufacturing, whether they're at the bakery, whether they're at the mercantile or whatever. If my employees feel like they're getting, let's say, preferential treatment for performance, you name it, then I think that's bad. So, I think from a business standpoint, even though we're family, everybody's held accountable at a relatively high level, and not relatively, at a high level to perform and do their job that they're reimbursed for. And, so I I think that's an important part, is that if the perception of employees is that, don't touch him, he's part of the family, don't you know? I think that undermines the culture that you're trying to build in these businesses. And so, whether it's in the manufacturing business, and this summer I'll have my grandson out here, doing dirty work, just like a lot of people that have to work here. It's sort of an unspoken or an unwritten message that, I guess if he has to do it, I guess we all have to do it, sort of thing. If if Owen is using a broom at the end of the day, I guess cleaning up is important here, so to speak. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but that's sort of the way I perceive our interactions, or my role with them within these businesses.
Well, and you kind of get to one of the threads that I've been enjoying pulling in these family business conversations, which is the ownership versus leadership. And there's that leadership expectation of a Dobbins, and then there's the ownership, and how do you balance those two things out?
Yeah, as you've coached and taught me, mentored me, the power of servant leadership is, incredible. And I think the employees have to sense that, is that, we lead by serving the employees. That can be from a compensation standpoint. It can be just from, we're firm believers in CFRs, conversation, feedback, recognition. Recognition is a big deal. It's something I don't do well a lot of times. I can always do better. And so those are key parts of that leadership structure that's in place. Same thing. Do we do it perfect? No. But we don't stop trying. And I'm really proud of the culture that we've worked on and built over the last 10 years or so. We've made a lot of progress, and and still a lot of things to do, though.
And I appreciate that. And so you've got what amounts to the third and fourth generation involved in working. What are some of the best practices that you're putting in place for them to lead the organization, or the organizations as it goes forward?
Them meaning third gen?
This is the third gen, yeah, because and Bill and I have had this conversation multiple times. There's going to come a time when you're no longer leading for one reason or another.
That's your opinion. I mean,
for those that don't know Bill, he is an MD as well, so maybe he knows something medically that I don't. But so what's the succession planning best practices that you're putting in place? I love the transparency one, because that means that people aren't surprised by anything. Are there others setting up?
The succession planning becomes sort of part of estate planning also, so I don't think you can necessarily, they're separate things, obviously. But I have not done a great job on succession planning. We have lots of conversations. It's a very challenging thing. I love what I do. And I love working in this business. And so those are really tough decisions for me to make. And, I feel like I have a lot to give, but that's no excuse for not planning for the future, frankly. Um, Andrew and I have had a lot of discussions about succession planning. And frankly, again, back to the full transparency, are the two of us the right people to sort of take care of this business into the next 10 or 20 years? And he's amazing at what he does, and it might not be best for the business that he takes the wheel, and he understands that. We've had that conversation, so I'm not discounting its value. I'm not. It eventually will be up to him, and part of that is when. It may not coincide when I want to step back. I the example I always think about is Bill Ford and Ford Motor Company, and he was the heir apparent, to step in and take over Ford Motor Company, and I think he ran it for a couple years, and then said, "Hey, I'm not the guy to run this business," and step back. And Alan Mulally took over at Ford and did an amazing job. And so, for a guy at that level, and again, groomed unbelievably to be in that role, to be willing to step back, I think is a lesson for all of us in these positions, no matter how big your business is, and that's transparency, that's honesty, that's soul searching, reflection. We have a responsibility not to, tens of thousands of people at Ford Motor Company, but to our 150 employees. They expect us to make the right decision for the next, 10, 20, 30 years. So,
Right.
It's a big deal. In my world, it's a big deal.
Well, and having been I'm halfway through the year now with these conversations, and some of the threads or the patterns that I'm seeing. One of them is how many people got their job because dad got sick, and
Yeah.
so that sudden I'm in this job, I'm thrust into it, and that wasn't that bridge. And then the other thing that's kind of interesting that goes with that is the concept of you can't be an owner if you're not working in the business, which some interesting things that people have brought up and said that create different issues, different ripple effects, and have different benefits. Are there any things like that you see as you evolve Casters into its team of businesses?
No, I not really. I think the thing that I fall back on is, again, the transparency, that I think is going to be important as we make, tougher decisions going forward. It Yeah, something could happen to me tomorrow, and then there's a succession plan. I'll share another best practice from my Vistage group is that I do have, what I call a contingency plan. So if I should suddenly be taken off of this earth, I have about a 5-page document that I've written. Um, it's it's been in play for over 15 years. Um, and it's meant to guide my kids if there's things that, I didn't take care of. Over those 15 years, I've taken care of several things. Not everything though. But it does address that, what happens to the leadership of Caster Concepts if Bill doesn't wake up tomorrow morning? And so, is it perfect? No. That contingency plan we also read at the family meeting. So I read through that entire document. We talk about it. We discuss it. My message to them is this isn't a mandate. This is just suggestions. Maybe, let's say, a roadmap that might help you to get through a mess that I've left you, so to speak. And So, that's been extremely valuable also is they get a sense of, we talk about communication. Is the picture in my mind the same picture that's in their mind? And I think the more I put that in writing, each one of those takes that document with them. So at some point they can pull it out of their drawer and look at it if something happens to dad. Um, and it gives me a lot of comfort. Maybe it doesn't comfort them at all, but I try to put myself in Andrew's position. We're very close. And if something happens to me, what's his mindset going to be? And what assistance does he need? And I have an advisory board, so, they're aware of it if something happens. So is that the best way to handle succession planning? No. But until there's something in place, it fills a gap. And I think it fills a need that everybody feels.
And that's a great example. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. This it's not that things are perfect, but here's something I've got in place that it's if I were to sit down and say, okay, I just died. Here's what I want to tell you all. That's the document that you've written that helps bridge that succession planning a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yep, absolutely. And my wife has it, all the kids have it. So I always feel good. I before our family meeting, I take, I don't know, whatever time, 2, 3 hours, I read through it. I make edits that maybe we took care of that, but I haven't taken care of this, or our businesses are changing them, enough that, there's new problems coming along. We haven't stopped creating problems yet. And so, those all are added in as edits. I always feel strongly, though, the last paragraph where I'm reflective about my relationship with my kids and how important they've been in my life and how it's important that they decide what they're going to do with their life. That paragraph has never changed from the day I wrote it. It's applicable today as much as it was 15 years ago. And so, I always feel good about that. It always brings tears to the family as we read through it. But it's when you get a chance to write something from the heart, it's
Yeah,
important.
that's cool. I appreciate you sharing that. So it's the bridge, and it's something that you reflect on, and I love the transparent nature of that as you move into that. Now, changing off the morbid subject for a second, there, try and get something more less Bill's going to die at some point because you
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, right.
um, but you said you had an advisory board. You bought the business from your dad and other partners. What makes you have an advisory board, and what's the makeup of your advisory board?
Well, the makeup are people that I've been close with for years, that I have high respect for, that are very skilled in their professions. Um, and so why have one? I always think the biggest risk in small businesses is it's too easy to fall in love with your own ideas. And I think that's a huge risk for people in my position. Um, and 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 so part of that is, you have people around you who are willing to question your decisions, your directions, strategy, plans, all those sorts of things in a respectful way. It's not a it's obviously not a publicly held company. They don't have any power outside of that. We have close relationships, and that's that's how they provide feedback. And there we meet 3 times a year, but they're I probably communicate in one way or another easily twice a month with the people that are on the board.
Right. And as I know, humanity is not a family business, but we have an advisory board for similar reasons. Smart people that we know will ask us the tough questions or tell us our baby's ugly.
Yeah, absolutely right. You don't always want to hear the feedback, um, but you're a lot better off getting the feedback, and then you can sort it through it on your own. It I tell people that's one thing running your own business, your family business, is you're betting with your own money every day, and you know, that's, you're betting with your family's money. And so you have to, you have to be willing to sort of, pull back the curtain and get naked and decide, am I really being honest with myself, so to speak? The other thing, and you and I have had some great conversations about that, is and we both feel strongly about continuing education and reading and um, and that's a part of my life. I know it's a part of your life. I don't know how you survive in any of these businesses these days, for sure, if you're not wired to sort of continually educate yourself. You're just putting your business at risk if you're running it by just, this is the way we've always done it. Work for grandpa, work for dad. I think it'll work for me. Um, a guy that I read a lot on, a strategy sort of thing, it said, if you're not tearing down and rebuilding your business on a regular basis, you're putting your business at risk. And so, I firmly believe that. And you don't tear it down just for the sake of tearing it down. You do that to stay with, a competitive landscape. And to your point, best practices, whether they be in business or whether they be in family.
So then just to close, you've got 20 years of experience building a gazillion family businesses with your kids, and you took over the one from your dad. What's one kind of thing you wish, as you look back, your dad would have done to have supported it in transition from first generation to second generation?
Wow. I get, I'm probably not going to answer that. So what I'm going to do is tell you what he did do, that that I put Caster Concepts on the right track. And again, this is in the rearview mirror, but so we started out with 4 owners. We built this business from scratch, all put in 10 grand, $40,000 of seed money. My dad didn't take a wage. My other partner didn't take a wage. I was in another business. Had some success, and as he knew that, his health was getting less and that sort of thing, he told me, he said, if this business is successful and it continues to grow, it's my belief that somebody has to have control, that, having 3 owners of equal ownership is going to be a very difficult thing to negotiate. And so he gave me the opportunity. I was the most involved, but he gave me the opportunity to buy controlling interest in the business. And, I paid him for it, but he gave me a fair shake on it. And, I think that served the business well. I'm not trying to tout myself. I'm just saying that I think in closely held businesses, I've been exposed to businesses where, 17 family members owned 3.2% of the shares, and, and it was terrible. It was terrible for the family. And so he put us in a position to be successful. That didn't guarantee that we were going to be successful. That didn't guarantee that I was going to do a good job, that I was going to be responsible. He trusted me, believed in me. And so he put me in a position to lead the business forward. And so I don't know what else he could have done, as he was passing it off. Again, it was still a relatively small business. And he could have, I have 3 other brothers, 2 sisters. He could have said, hey, I'm going to divide up all the shares between all my kids because I want to treat them fair. That, in my belief, would have been a disaster for the business. He would have thought he was doing a good thing by including everybody. But in his heart, he knew that somebody was going to have to make decisions. Somebody was going to have to push it forward. And so I think that's what he did. And what he didn't do was to dilute the shares, fractionate ownership, fractionate responsibility. I would have never been able to leave my other profession if I didn't have control of my own destiny.
Right. So that making sure that one person was in control, that it was obvious who that was, has allowed the decision making to go on, that has enabled the organization to continue to grow.
Absolutely. And again, I'm sure there's other corporate structures that maybe people are familiar with, and they would say, well, I think this is better, that's better. But in his mind, it was better that, somebody had a controlling interest. And so he that's what he did.
Well, just before we leave, let's just point out that those people who are in and around Michigan, when they're driving along I-94 at about exit 124, they'll see your building on the north side of the road. So, and everybody knows it around December time, because you put up some season's greetings for the travelers. So, and then if you're in Albion, you can go visit the Foundry Bakery or the Mercantile or the Pure Albion. I don't know the name of the cigar shop. The Ryan Club, I think.
Ryan Club, that's what it is. You're right.
And then your background image there, for those that are watching on the video version, is the band shell in Victory Park in Albion, where tell us what you put on there through the summer.
So this will be our 20th year of providing free entertainment for 8-9 events during the summer. So this is a band shell that was built, lean out of the way. This band shell was finished in October of 1941, 2 months before World War II broke out. And it's 1941.
A little bit earlier than that. It was when America joined it. That was
okay. I'll stand corrected. Before the U.S. got involved in World War II and Pearl Harbor in December 7th. So for 20 years, we've caretake this masonry structure, caretake this area of the park, and provide free entertainment. And it's growing from, when we started out, there might have been 100 people there. I think at 3 of the concerts last year, we had somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 people come and enjoy a free concert in the park. And then our grand finale is free hot dog night. So the last concert of the year, Caster Concepts cooks anybody that wants to come, free hot dogs. And we gave away about 1,100 hot dogs last year, which was another record. So again, one of our passions of providing free entertainment to the community.
Well, I appreciate that. So you can check out Swinging at the Shell if you want more information there. Caster Concepts. Bill, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, David. As always, it's a pleasure. I appreciate you asking me to be involved.
That was the Humanity Leadership Podcast. My name's David Wheatley. For further information about Humanity, go to humanity.com or check out our latest book, What Great Teams Do Great, from all good bookstores. Have a good one. Stay healthy.